if you speak now, it will record your voice. So please explain the certificate of lawful uses into that, and then I'll type it up. You see, is what I mean. Because I don't understand the certificate of uses, northern site and southern site.
Right.
You could surmise just like you just did.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
The certificate of lawful use on the southern site was because they'd actually completed the rest of the estate. They still had what they term as extant planning permission because it was implemented. They'd actually started building. There was to be 10 two-bedroom townhouses on the southern site, but in the original 1975 plans that were passed in 76. I've forgotten where I'm going now.
We've got a northern site certificate of use of 1976.
Yeah, there was to be 10 two-bedroom townhouses, and they had underground car parking facilities. They were built on piers, just open. In 1988, they again applied for a certificate of lawful use for both sites. The design of the properties was changed. They changed them to being garages and not car parking spaces. They changed them from they were going to be blocks of 4, 4 and 3. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then they made them into 3 and 7, and they made them wider, but they didn't start those.
Right.
They were never started. Don't know what reason they didn't start them. At the same time, they applied for a certificate of lawful use for the northern site, which was covered under a 1979 planning permission, because the plans were different. The original 11 townhouses were proposed for the northern half of the site. The rear wall collapsed. They couldn't complete them because they had to build a wall further down the site which stopped the car parking spaces from being used. So they changed them to being 16 masonettes, which were later changed to be called 4 square houses as
These
part
are all
of
amendments.
They've all amendments.
Yeah, as part of their deception.
You're not going to get it all in 5 minutes.
In 2007 they applied for a certificate of lawful use for the southern site, which was the 2-bedroom 10 houses, but they didn't use the 1976 plans. They used the 1988 plans, which we dispute is right, because it was never implemented. They didn't start them, so how can it be extant? Well, we've had this argument with the council, and the council say that because they were started in 1976, any amendments are also extant.
Forever.
What does extant mean?
Extant means if they've started something, they can continue it at a later date.
Right.
So, as opposed to just...
what, even if it collapses? And
yeah.
Just an... Oh dear.
It can be anything at
they
all.
can come up here today and start again, the one that collapsed in 78. They could knock that retaining wall down legally and rebuild what they had originally planned in 1976.
Yeah.
Crikey.
Total nonsense.
Yeah, without but they'd have to get a certificate of lawful use.
A certificate of lawful use then is not planning permission,
no.
but it says that you can use the previous planning permission that was once
it stops enforcement action against you. But it's supposed to be exactly to the plans, so they should have used the 1976 plans, which there aren't any. We can't find any. Don Wise has been looking for these 1976 plans.
They buried them, probably.
All we can find from 1976 is a...
It just says to be decided sort of thing.
So why can't you get hold of the 1976 documentation?
Because they kept changing the designs. Because of the problems with the land and various other things, they kept changing the designs. They kept amending. Originally, in the 1975 plans, there was to be 23 townhouses across that site. That's the original
plan.
And 2 blocks of flats.
Fantastic,
yeah. There was 23 townhouses, and these were blocks of flats. Well, because they said it was overdeveloped, because you've got 25% up on this bank, so to speak, they changed the design, and they added one of these blocks to this block of flats, and one of them to that block of flats, and they changed these to a different position.
This is recent, is it?
No, this was in 1976. Because this is a car park. That was to be a horseshoe shape, but now, because they changed these flats there, they've blocked off some of the car parking spaces.
Right.
And because they'd taken some of these car parking spaces, they had to build car parking spaces up here, and some of these houses, they were moved along.
So what's the dispute about the car parking spaces? Actually, have we concluded this certificate of lawful use stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, the car parking. I think I've already got something on the website about that. But, it's astounding.
It is astounding.
Yeah, the car parking. Park Lane's evidence was that because they used a plan, which was actually the 1976 plan, but it showed the 4 square houses on it. They said because these car parking spaces are actually shown on the plan, it proves that they were built for the houses. But they wasn't. They was built for the previous phase. They was already there. They were making use of what was already there. They didn't build them.
So the car parking spaces were already there, and they allocated them car parking spaces.
Yep.
But they're saying that they want to build some new ones. Or
No, they're saying that those allocated parking spaces prove that they started the build for the 1978.
The 1979 planning permission ran from 1979 to 1981.
And all they'd done was write on a bit of paper that was allocated for those car parking spaces, and it wasn't.
It wasn't. Their evidence, they took photographs of the car parking spaces, and there's one spare parking space which was originally for visitors, but Park Lane are claiming is theirs, and then 2 car parking spaces, because on the... Where's the 1976 drawing? Because on the original plans there was 8 car parking spaces and 3 spare. The Park Lane said that these are the 3 car parking spaces, but there aren't 3 car parking spaces spare, because when they had to rebuild the retaining wall, when it all collapsed, they built the retaining wall over the top of 1.5 car parking spaces.
Right.
I don't know.
So their evidence was a photograph of the empty car parking space, Maddie's car parking space, and our car parking space, and that was their evidence, which was sent to the council, that proved that those car parking spaces were built between 1979 and 1981. But the council's evidence was a phone call to Derrick Island highways manager, and they said, when do you think the car parking spaces would have been laid? Well, I think they were laid out in 1982, which is outside of the 3 years anyway. And they accepted it.
And that's it. That's the only evidence that they had that the build was started.
Do you think they're siding totally with the developer all
Yes.
the time?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I think.
They're refusing to revoke that certificate.
Because
they
used...
said that the certificate can't be used for any future planning applications. They've accepted that, but they won't revoke it. Well, Park Lane is still saying, I've got this certificate as far as they're concerned. It hasn't been revoked. The reason it's not been revoked is because the council don't want to be implicated. But as far as Park Lane's concerned, they've got a certificate.
That Park Lane have actually written to the inspector, and they said that if this planning permission is refused, then they will go back to the 1979 plans with no conditions placed on it.
Is that legal? Can they do that?
No, because they haven't got a certificate of lawful use, because it's been made illegal. Park Lane are trying it on. They've got their own barrister. But what the council did was so that they could make the certificate of lawful use invalid, was they said that the wrong date had been put on it, because the date they used was the date that it was effectively passed, but they should have used the date that the application was made, because a certificate of lawful use is valid from the date that it's submitted, so that they are covered should they start building.
Right.
So the council got their barrister, they said to their barrister, how do we get out of this one, mate? And he said, oh, just say the date's wrong,
right,
and that it's illegal. So the council said, right, the date's wrong, but that doesn't mean the 1979 planning permission wasn't started, so we just carry on regardless, because they were trying to pass another amendment on it.
You couldn't make
You
this up.
couldn't make
It
it
all
up.
started that.
I'd probably stop and start again, because otherwise